Hi Dawn, thank you for coming to, or letting me observe your lesson first of all. It was really good. I saw lots of excellent practice in there, and it was really nice to see you taken on board a lot of the things that we'd talked about last week, so that was brilliant to see. So before I tell you what I observed throughout the lesson, how do you think it went? If you focus on your strengths first of all, how do you think the lesson went?
I think it went well. I think I thought a lot about last time you observed, and I put a lot more effort into planning, and I think my planning was more evident as a strength with my questioning, my ability to sort of pick out where students perhaps weren't understanding quite as well, and being able to differentiate questions towards students. So at various points in the lesson, I think strengths as well would be relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that was evident in behaviour management.
Mm-hmm.
The girls, when they came in, were very excitable, but I feel I managed to calm them down quickly, get them focused, and because it's not simply me just standing at the front and barking orders, I feel the relationships I've been able to develop mean that I can do that more subtly around the classroom and I'm trying more to move around the classroom. I think my progress around the classroom helped with that, so students are always on target, and then it sets the high standards then of we're focusing on working. I felt that the students were engaged for the most part.
Definitely.
But yeah, I think that mainly then the focus being on, because the relationships are good, I know then I can teach a lesson. I feel more confident teaching the lesson.
Yeah.
And then it's, questioning is probably the biggest strength.
I agree with that, definitely. The relationships are definitely there. So early on in your teaching, it's great that you've got such good relationships with them. And there's lots of things that you do throughout the lesson to build those relationships. You met them at the door, which was brilliant. As soon as they came in, they had something to do on the board. They had their starter on the board, so that's brilliant as well. There was no time when they had nothing to do, which is why, like you said, the behaviour management was there as well. Really high expectations. And also, because they have got such good relationships with you, they want to please you. And because they want to please you, they complete the work, and they don't just complete the work averagely. They are working, engaged to the best of their ability the whole time, so that's brilliant. So I'm just going to run through what I picked out throughout the lesson. There's absolutely loads of strengths, and I've printed you a copy as well, but you can kind of listen and then take that away with you. So in terms of TS2, promoting good progress and outcomes by the pupils, there were lots that you did throughout the lesson to meet that. What I really liked is right at the start of the lesson, you showed them the big picture. So you gave them the question that they were going to be answering at the end of the lesson. So the whole way through the lesson, they were taking ownership of their own progress. So you told them, you had on the board, fostering and adoption are an important part of family life. Do you agree? You explained to the students that at the end of the lesson, they would be answering this question. So throughout the lesson, they were collecting different pieces of information from you or from the worksheets that you provided, and they knew that that was going to help them to answer the question at the end. So they had an incentive, which I really liked, and I think that worked really well. Another thing in terms of the progress, it was really obvious the progress over time. Right at the start of the lesson, Daphne, who is a low ability student, she was able to reel off a quote from the catechism that she'd learned previously, and I was really impressed with that. And it shows that actually, although she's a low ability student, you're not limiting her, you're giving her resources so she can make outstanding progress, so that's brilliant. We talked about your high expectations, so TS1. Throughout the lesson, you used praise, but it was genuine praise. And the way that the students can tell it's genuine praise, you're not just saying, yeah, good, lovely, perfect. You're telling them why you're praising them. So, for example, China gave an answer partway through the lesson. You asked a question and she answered the question. And you said to her at the end, that was a really excellent use of specific key language. When you're using specific praise like that, the children, the students, they listen and they clearly want to do well. Another thing is that the students were really confident. They're confident participating and sharing ideas openly with the class. And I think that shows, that's a bit of TS5 as well, with you responding to pupils' strengths, but also their needs, and not just their academic needs. You were teaching actually quite a sensitive topic. Adoption and fostering is a sensitive topic within the classroom. And the students were really confident sharing their personal experiences. And again, this comes back to those relationships that you've built so early on. So that's brilliant. I agreed. I think your planning was really good. It was much better. I think you really listened to what we talked about last week about making sure that your objectives are simple enough so students can meet them, but also challenging enough so they can make excellent progress throughout the lesson. It meant that throughout the lesson, using this big picture idea, students knew what they were doing. And also you kept referring back to the lesson objectives. You said, what was lesson objective 1? This is what we're doing in this task. So that was really good to see as well. Another thing that I thought was really good, and I thought it showed that you knew your class so early on, was your use of the think, pair, share routine, the thinking routine. You asked them a question, why do we need adoption and fostering? And it's actually quite a challenging, challenging question for the year group. Knowing your class, you gave them that thinking time. So when they did feed back the answers, they fed back good answers. So I thought that was really good as well, knowing that they would have needed the thinking time for that. Another thing that we've talked about a few weeks ago was the use of you assessing throughout the lesson. And I know we talked about we're going to try and get rid of the hands up, because the hands up meant that we were picking the same people every time, and some people were not being assessed because of that. So it was really good to see the hands down approach used throughout the lesson, and you just picking on people, and because of the relationships they were comfortable giving their answers. So that was brilliant as well. The other thing that I noticed you adding, you said questioning was a strength, and it was. You've obviously used the questioning template that we've given you.
Yeah.
So you've gone from recall for the lower ability students to using the more evaluative questions for the high ability students. So that's brilliant, and continue to do that. Classroom management, they're engaged, they're on task, they were working really well. There's clear boundaries and routines in place, but there wasn't actually any low-level disruption in the lesson. And I think that is because of the relationships you've built. And meeting them at the door, I think, really helps, because although they're coming from lunch, so it is a really hard time to teach when they're coming from lunch, they're very high. Having you at the door, being very calm, slowing them down as they come in, having something for them to do when they come in, really helps with your classroom management. So that was brilliant as well. In terms of your targets from last week, it was pace. How do you think you did in terms of meeting that target throughout this lesson?
I feel like I improved, but I still think it's an issue. I'm definitely not reaching the final objectives.
Yeah.
And at some points I'm sort of stalling. I'm spending too much time on certain points. It's almost as if I'm trying to ensure that absolutely every student fully understands without progressing the rest of the class.
Yeah, which is important. It is important that every student understands, but you need to think of ways that you can do that for individual students rather than for the whole class. So could you move the class forward and then go to the individual student and speak to them? I think because we've been talking about pace, and you have been getting better, definitely. It was a really well planned lesson, and it was such a shame that the written task that you had been working them towards, you had to set for homework in the end. I mean, it's fine, you'll be able to assess it, so it's good that you set it rather than just ignored it. But it was a shame that they didn't get to answer that question throughout the lesson. And I think although we said that questioning was a strength, in some circumstances the questioning was too long. So I think you need to think about that as well. Yes, we're questioning them to assess their progress, but there are points in the lesson when they began questioning you, and they were almost taking you off task. So maybe when you plan your questioning in, how long are you going to question for, and stick to it as well, I think,
Okay.
And the other thing is, some tasks you said, right, you've got 4 minutes to do this task, and then they all started, and then it was about 7 minutes, you hadn't said anything, and they were still going. They didn't really know if the 4 minutes had been up, and then you said, right, you've got 2 minutes left, but they'd already had about 7 minutes. So just keep an eye on your timings as well. I would say definitely think about using a stopwatch on the board. It's really good for you, but it would be brilliant for them as well. They can see it, they can see their time ticking away, so it's going to speed them up as well, and allow for them to make progress quicker. Is there anything differently that you would have done throughout the lesson?
Maybe in sight of, if I feel that in planning, that if I feel that actually some things might be too complex for the girls, maybe having an alternative task work perhaps. So talking about, I'm almost waiting for the whole class to come along together, maybe having different options of task work so that they can, the higher ability can be doing one thing that's more differentiated to them. So in a sense, differentiating my work more to help with, because then the questioning, because I felt that some of the questions they were asking of me were very varied, showing that some of the girls were struggling with the low end stuff, and then some of the girls were pushing the high end stuff that I hadn't really catered for. No, I'd agree with that. I think the differentiation, although I saw signs of it, and I saw it definitely at the low end, because you had the worksheets differentiated for them with the key words on, so that was really good. Definitely saw it on the low end. I think you're right. I think those high end students, are they really being pushed as much as they could be? And it's thinking of ways that you could do that. You did have an extension or challenged task, but it was only on one of the activities. So it probably wouldn't be that difficult to make sure that you have a challenge task on every activity. So there's no point when students are kind of finished and waiting for you. So you might want to think about that as well. So our targets going forward then, we're going to keep with PACE, so coming under TS2, promote good progress and outcomes by pupils. In order to do that, we need to make sure that our pace is quick enough. Keep teacher talk to a minimum. That was through the questioning and the discussion. Sometimes it did go over, so think about how long you're actually going to devote to that and stick to it, I would say. Because of that, like I said, we didn't get to the final question, which was a bit disappointing because the lesson had been so well planned. That would have been a great way to assess progress, but I was really happy to see that you did set it for the homework. Stopwatch, we talked about, so in order to keep your pace up, I would start thinking about using a stopwatch or a timer or something to help you keep the pace. One thing I did notice from circling throughout is the books were marked well, they are marked up to date, but in some circumstances you've just put good work. So I would think about, and we'll do this in our meeting this week, I'd think about using precise targets to help them to improve. So rather than just saying good work, tell them why the work is good. The work is good because you used key language, you explained your point in detail here, whatever it was, tell them why it's good. But also give them a clear target for improvement. So what do they need to do next? So we'll talk about that later in our meeting. Okay.
And that's everything really. Everything else I was really happy with. So it's the pace, definitely. I know we've been working on, but we'll keep working on it. The questioning was there, so we need to continue to do that. And the precise marking, giving clear targets for improvement we'll work on. And that's hopefully what we'll be able to see in your next observation.
Okay, thank you.
That's okay. Any questions?
Not so much at the moment.
Perfect. I'll send this to you electronically as well.
All right, thank you.
Lovely. Thank you.